Welcome to another episode of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. My special guest this week is RJ Andrews. So RJ, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is RJ Andrews. I live in San Francisco, and I am obsessed with data graphics. And as part of that obsession, I read a lot of dead tree, dusty, old books. And so today I want to tell you about some of the little tools that I've acquired over the years in helping me read those books.
Well, thank you. It's such a great delight to be here because I am also really fascinated with infographics as well. Not to your extent, but I have a passion for it. So, RJ, what's a tool that a favorite tool of yours that I'd like to share right away?
Okay, so when you read a book, it's sometimes nice to not have to hold it, especially if it's a big book. And if you went to a fancy library or an archival center or something, you'd see something like this. And these are foam wedges, and they're sometimes called book cradles or book pillows. And the thing is about these things is
so
that
they're about the size of
they come in different sizes for little books, for big books. What I'm holding up is anywhere from 12 to 18 inches long, but that's not the cool tool because these things are expensive. They take up a lot of space. This is the cool tool. What the cool tool is this, and this is an airline neck pillow. And these you can get for $20 overpriced at the airport, or maybe $10 on Amazon. You're used to seeing it around your neck, but actually what I use this for is to cradle a book, because you can kind of move the little beans in the airline neck pillow around to perfectly fit your book. And just like this, the book fits in the airline neck pillow, and it's cradled nice, and you don't have to hold it. And you're eating breakfast, you can do this. You have the book on your desk. You can put it here. You can just leave it in the pillow. And the spine of the book is going to be nice and safe, and it'll keep it open to the page that you like. Well, that actually, does it keep it open to the page that you like? Maybe not. Sometimes spines are a little stiff, and the book doesn't want to lay flat on its own, and so it needs some help laying flat. And that brings up our second tool, right?
Okay.
And so the second tool, again, there are versions of this that are expensive. Sometimes they're called book snakes, because they're like lead weights, like sewn into a fancy cylinder of cloth. But we're not fancy here. Like we like inexpensive tools. And so this on Amazon, you're going to find this. It looks kind of like a blackjack, honestly, but this is called a book weight, and it's lead weights, and it's lead weights sewn into a long strip of leather.
Right. So it's about the size of a hot dog.
Yep.
And about that rough shape, and it's there's two ends to it. So there's a floppy middle, and then the ends have these weighted dimples or whatever they're called.
Yeah, sort of like pockets, like sewn shut pockets on the end that are full of weight. And the thing that's great about this is that you just slap this on your book, and it keeps it perfectly open to whatever page you want. Right. And when I'm reading a more recent book, the kind of book that I can write in, then this is nice to just keep like that normal sort of normal size book open. But when I'm also looking at a very, very large book, it's important to be careful with large books. And this can kind of go on just like one edge of one page.
Oh, so it's not big enough to span the page of a big book. That's what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so, and if I need a second one of these, what do? I usually bring out my phone, and I'll use my phone as a weight. And so you can go
on the other page. You mean like
on the other page, because it's about the same weight as a normal size smartphone.
Right.
One of these book weights.
Well, you would think somebody would make a larger version of that just had a more in between the two. That was like a 18-inch.
Yeah, like an 18-inch one, a bigger one. Oh, you'll also see rare book collectors, they'll have these like brass hands. And so sometimes when you look at rare book dealers, the books are held open, not by these kind of clunky weight, that I have, but they have these very finely tooled brass hands, and the brass hands kind of clasp the side of the book, and it makes for very cute, images. But I live in a crowded flat in San Francisco. Like I don't have capacity for fancy brass tooling. There's books everywhere, but so this cheap brass weight or this cheap book weight, does the
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. No, I think what somebody should do is just make a longer version of that for the big books.
For the big books. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay, so that's tools one and
Wait,
two. And
so we went through a couple of tools, but let me just backtrack a little bit.
mm,
So the weighted bookmark looks like it's about $10 on Amazon. Are there particular brands that are better than others, or is it just one? I guess there's a couple others. Is this the Maxi Aids? Is this a superior
I
or is it
don't think it matters. I don't think it matters what the
okay?
brand is. I think this is a situation where it's such a easy to produce and cheap product
Yeah,
that I would be, I'm surprised that the brand I bought several years ago still like, is still online, right?
right. Okay, so Maxi Aids weighted bookmark, $10. That seems like a deal. And then for the neck pillow, again, it's whatever one
Doesn't
you
matter.
have. Doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. I started by using, the neck pillow that I bring on airplanes, honestly.
Right. So this is a travel pillow, foam travel neck thing, also $10 on Amazon. So that's a great one. I was use a little pillow, but I like the idea of the neck pillow because it has the built-in spine cavity. I
That's
like
right.
that. It's a really great idea.
That's right. And also the thing that's also nice is that the neck pillows often have like a snap closure, for
Yeah.
storage or so you can
Uh-huh.
hang it. And that allows you to very easily, change sort of how open or closed the neck pillow
Yeah.
is for how you want to read your book.
Right.
And there's so I've used the neck pillow and this weighted bookmark for a long time now, maybe nearly a decade. And what's nice about them is that it really great the way that I sort of uh adventure through information space is basically, how do you get off screens? Right. And so you need to make the barrier to access to books and analog information. You have to make it as inviting and as easy as possible in order to actually sit down with a real book. And it's nice sometimes to cradle up with like a novel in an easy chair or a hammock or something, but that's not normal. Like what's normal for me is actually having the book ready to go, open to the page where I was last at. And so really like, yes, it like these tools help me when I'm reading it, but um they also make the analog book experience more inviting and most importantly more accessible so that I'm lured into that experience more often.
Right. Yeah, you're fighting the temptations of the rest of the world. So anything that gets you there faster will help.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
Um
with that in mind, you have another
yeah, so tool number 3. So tool number 3 is my most recent addition, and thinking about that, barriers to access is it's really good to have sleep hygiene. And so ideally you're off your screens, maybe an hour before bed, and you're talking, maybe to your partner or you're reading or whatever you're doing, but you're sort of winding down, your digital life. And unfortunately, like the way our sleeping situation is like there's no easy way for me to have a reading light by my bed. I'd have to basically like drill into the wall and install something and then run an extension cord. It would just be too crazy. I live in an old 1870 flat, and it's just not really possible. And one of my friends said, "Well, you should try one of these." And so this is a reading light, and I'll describe it, but it's a reading light that wraps around your neck. And so
uh-huh.
it sort of wraps around your necks and then kind of like hangs down on either side. So it's open in the front.
Right, right,
And it wraps around your head. And there are two um, flexible, flexible little teeny tiny pen lights. And the
right.
pen lights are independently controlled. So you can turn one on or you can
Uh-huh.
turn both on. And you can also control the quality of the light
Right,
so that they are more bright, less bright, more warm, more
right.
cool. And the great thing about this is that there's little LEDs. The batteries are going to last probably for forever.
Yeah.
And I can just have this by my bedside, crammed in
Right, right,
under
right.
the pillow even. And it really has allowed me to read at night before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
In a way that I wasn't doing beforehand. Again, talking about going back to behavior
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
accessibility. Now I have this, and I have whatever book I'm reading at night right next to it, and it's almost, now it's obvious and it's part of my routine that I
Mhm.
just sit in bed and I put my little ridiculous neck light on, and I cross it.
Yeah.
And you can cross them so that you're shining on either page really nicely.
Uh-huh.
And it's adjustable. So if I'm the only one awake, I'm not bothering anybody with it, in a way that you would be bothering somebody if you had an overnight headlight, or even like a classic like reading light, on a
Yeah.
on a nightstand next to you.
I thought
Um,
where you were going with that was one of these little hiking headlight forehead headlights.
so I've done that, and I've my son has like a little tent in his bedroom, and he loves
Yeah.
reading in his pop-up tent. And so I'll go into there and we'll read books with headlights, but the headlight is very glaring. It's not
Yeah. Yeah.
a great quality light, and it's also not very comfortable to wear a
Right.
headlight
Right. Right.
to
Right.
to read. And so this is very comfortable. It's very transportable. You could take this on an airplane flight, with your neck pillow if you wanted to.
Actually, sometimes on airplanes, the lights are not working overhead properly, and so that would be a good backup.
Yeah, and I also on airplanes, the overhead light, I always I'm a sensitive person, and so I feel like you put that light on and it's going to bother everybody else around you, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
that's not really focused to you. It
Right.
sort of lights up it sort of lights up the whole space, and sometimes I feel a little uncomfortable, putting that on.
Yeah. So
Okay, so
so
that
so so wait so again, this thing is called the Glow Scent, the Glucoscent Booklight.
yeah, it sounds like a pharmaceutical product, doesn't
It does.
it?
Some weird nutrition. So it's $21 currently, 80-hour long rechargeable lamp. So yeah, and it doesn't. I guess there are other versions. There's a cheaper version for $19. Um, so LED neck reading light.
That's right. Yep. And this was recommended to me recently by a friend. I was telling him my problem, and how I wasn't reading at night, and he said his mom used this and she loved it, and I'm like, okay, let's try
Yeah,
this out. And again, you buy a gadget, especially a cheap gadget, and you don't know if it's going to go in a drawer and you're never going to see it
right.
again or not. And this is actually this has been part of daily life, so that's really nice.
That's really great. Okay. So so RJ, your fourth tool. What's a fourth tool that you would like to share with our readers?
Okay, I have a fourth tool, and it's sort of a variant on the neck pillow. And so my dad's an architect, and I grew up with drafting tables, because he actually designed buildings by hand. Um, and I grew up, personally working on a tabletop drafting table, and that's where I would draw. And the great thing about a drafting table is that it saves your neck, right? And so if you're drawing on a flat surface, you're going to be hunched over, your neck's going to hurt. A drafting table lifts things off of the horizontal so that you can look at the flat space more naturally.
Right. So let me
Okay,
describe a drafting table for those who don't know, which is it's not it's like a little tilted piece of wood or tilted table that's at an angle. It's not
right.
horizontal. And I always thought drafting tables, well, I've seen drafting tables that were flat that had the T-square and stuff, but is the technical term for a table that is at an angle, is that called a drafting table?
That's how I know. I think that there's two features for a drafting table. One is that it tilts and that you can control the tilt.
Right.
And that the other one is that there is that you mentioned the T-square, that there
T-square
is
thing.
that flat edge
Right.
so that you can use your T-square or your triangle, and you can get, easy
Right.
square lines.
Right.
I was familiar with drafting tables, and particularly tabletop drafting tables. A tabletop drafting table is simply a miniature drafting table that you place on a regular kitchen table or desk. Um, and and as I started collecting all of these large atlases and other large design books, I mean, I love big, heavy books, but they're not natural, right? Like a book is an extension of the human body. And it should be, a real book should be able to, you can hold it with one hand and you can read it and you can enjoy it. But there's lots and lots of wonderful books that like that's just not possible because they're heavy and they're large and they need support. And I like reading these books, but it's hard to read those books, right? Okay, so I'm going to tilt my camera a little bit for viewers to see, and we'll keep describing things. But if we look down, I have one of my favorite, large, design books on display here, and
I'm
it's
laughing because it's my Vanishing Asia book, which is oversized.
is oversized and it's huge and it should be oversized, right? There's so much content that we want to
Right,
that
right, right.
we want to see in this. But it's sitting on my tabletop drafting table. And so I rarely use this for illustration, but what I use this drafting table for, and it always sits here perpendicular to my digital desk. So I have an analog desk, so I have an L-shaped desk situation, and I have, to my left always is my analog desk. That's where my drafting table is, my tabletop drafting table. And I often, sometimes like any surface, it gets, full of junk. But often what I try to do is keep one of my big design books here. And then, I can come in here and sometimes the book will just be on display here for weeks on end. And every day, it's just, you just take a moment, you just flip through some pages, you find one that you really like, and you just leave it there. And it's
Right,
just there as a sort of like, miniature little art exhibit that you
right,
can enjoy.
right. So the drafting table that you're talking about here is, I guess, something like maybe 20 inches high or deep, and I don't know, almost 30 inches
Yeah, about
wide,
30
or
inches wide, maybe.
about
Yeah,
30 inches wide. So it's substantial, and has a little ledge in the front to like a foot to hold the book in place so it doesn't slide off. And
that's
looks
right.
like then you can adjust the angle, I assume.
Yes, yeah. So this one, has maybe 4 or 5 different angles you can adjust. I mean, this is a fairly, cheap version. This is all wood. There's no metal parts. A big drafting table would have, metal parts that you'd loosen, you'd change,
Right, right,
you'd rotate it, and then you tighten it again. This
right,
isn't that fancy.
right. So again, as a cool tool, this this is called the Falling in Art Extra Large Wood Drafting Table Easel Drawing Sketching Board. And it's 30 by 20, just as we guessed. It's 30 by 20, and it's $70. And yeah, it looks very woody. And there are some alternatives um that are even less expensive, and so who knows? But there's
Right.
there's another one that a little bit narrower, 25 inches instead of 30, for $50. And so presume one could have, if you have a bunch of books to display, you could have more than one.
Yeah, and there is this is a product category that's adjacent to cookbook holders.
Yes.
And so cookbook holders are a little bit smaller, but they're really beefy because cookbooks are often very heavy.
Right.
And what this doesn't have that a cookbook holder does is a cookbook holder will usually have a built-in mechanism to hold it open to a particular page.
Right.
And of course, I don't need that. Why?
Because you
Because I
have a
have my book
weighted.
weight. I have
Yeah.
my book weight. And so my book weight, if I need to, I can, hold it open to a particular
Right,
page.
right, right, right. Yes. So I actually need one of these because I don't have a stand for my Vanishing Asia books myself. And you're right that some books just need a place to be displayed.
Hmm.
Um, and this is a great option, very reasonable price.
Yeah,
So
very reasonable. And you look at Taschen produces huge oversized books,
yeah,
and they sell book stands, for
right.
some of their books. And
Yeah, the Hockney book comes with his own stand, which is a kind of a plexiglass thing that
yeah, and I
is immense.
honestly they're expensive, and I don't think they're as I mean, as a plexiglass thing might look good in a, certain homes or maybe in a museum or gallery setting. But, I'm in a historic flat. I want warm, humanistic
Yeah,
materials. And so
right.
the wood is really nice.
Yeah, it is. It is, right. And I can tell you that the Hockney stand is not $69 either. So yeah, it's a great tool. So RJ, thank you for that. Just wonderful reading and book related tools, emphasizing the value of books in our lives. For those who are just listening, RJ is in front of a fantastic bookcase filled with old and new books as a backdrop. So these are great tools. Thank you again. So RJ, do you have something you want to share with our audience? Something that you're passionate about? Um, something that you really want to let other people know about?
Sure. So during the pandemic, I started a publishing shingle called Visionary Press and make really beautiful, spectacularly designed, but spectacularly produced books. I believe that for a book needs to deserve to be real in today's digital age, that, most books should just be PDFs, or something equivalent. And so a book actually has to deserve to exist today. And so we fight to make books that deserve to exist.
As
And
on paper, you mean?
yeah, on
Right, right,
paper.
right,
And
right. Yeah. So we have a little newsletter called Books That Belong on Paper,
mm,
where we review books that need to be on paper. And so there are some books like that. And
yes.
they're often very visual in my opinion. That's one of the things that books can do that even the best screens so far, they're getting there, but in many ways the display on a book can't really be beat
Yeah,
by a
I absolutely agree. And so Visionary Press, the newest title we have coming out is called Info We Trust: How to Create Value with Data Graphics. And it's going to be absolutely gorgeous, but also absolutely readable. This is a book that you can hold with one hand, and it feels great. I have the book blank already, and we're about to turn on the printing presses with it. And so that's what I need to plug today is Info We Trust.
so I haven't seen your books, but was familiar with the Edward Tufte books, which
Hmm.
kind of are from your description are very similar to that. They're high quality produced, very legible books that celebrate, information on a page, the visual element of information in a book form. So where does your press stand in relation to say to the Tufte
Yeah,
self?
so I mean there are a couple of things that are incredibly inspiring by the Tufte story. One is that his ability to popularize the enthusiasm for this field
Right.
is really incredible, and he took some really big risks in doing so. Famously, he mortgaged his house in order to self-finance the production back in the early '80s. And then the other thing is that his commitment to the quality is really amazing. And so there's definitely some notes that are taken from him. But he wasn't the first, information graphic enthusiast to kind of do it himself. There, in fact, is about every generation, there's somebody like me or Tufte who gets fed up with traditional publishing industry and says, I'll
Uh-huh.
just do it correctly my way.
Okay.
And so he wasn't the first, before him. There are people like Willard Brenton, and others who said,
Mhm.
I'm going to do it my way. And
I see.
usually these people have one experience with the traditional publishing industry and get really fed up.
Okay.
And being a designer or practitioner, they're like, I'm gonna obsess over every detail and lose money, in the process.
Is that your strategy?
Oh, well, the strategy is materializing.
Um, and what's your role in all this?
I mean, Visionary Press is my baby.
Okay.
Um,
So are you
and
doing the editing? Are you doing the writing? Are you doing the
so
design? Are you doing everything?
Info We Trust is particularly my baby. And so that I wrote it. I designed the book. And most importantly, I hand illustrated it, so it has over 300 hand drawn illustrations in it. And hand drawn analog. I did it with Prismacolor markers, and scan things in. And I still believe that you can tell when something's been done on an iPad or other digital means versus actually done in analog space. And maybe someday that gap will close, but you can still spot the difference, and I still think that difference really matters. And so if I had to redo this, it's such a headache to do things to get it into digital space, from analog space. And so, maybe there'd be a different production, sort of
Sure.
pipeline next time. But we have professional copy editors and a professional, book designer kind of as adult supervision as well.
I'm very actually interested in the hybrid space. And I did a whole year where every day I made art, a piece of art, but I was on the iPad because I used to do it on paper, but the iPad gave me one thing that I was always struggling with, which is mixing colors. Getting
Mm,
the exact color that you want, particularly in paint, is
mm,
so hard. It's not obvious at all how you arrive at a particular shade of green or something. And the iPad color wheel allowed me to pick those colors, which is really great. So, but what I'm interested in is this hybrid version where I can draw on paper in, say, the outlines or the sketching, whatever it
mm.
is, and then move that so that when I get to the color, when I'm applying color, I have that I have that wheel to or the palettes to give me the colors that I want because
Mm.
I still have trouble creating a particular.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, one aspect of the technology space I've been surprised by is that e-ink sort of solutions haven't
yeah.
haven't progressed as rapidly as I think some people have hoped for, and the prices haven't come down as quickly as
Uh-huh.
people have hoped. I mean, the personally, the strongest linkage between the human mind and the exterior world is still the paper and pencil.
Mhm.
And that they're like anything else, it feels a little more cloudy for me than a straight paper and pencil. Is just the most expedient way to get ideas,
Mhm.
to externalize an
Mhm.
idea. And
Mhm.
that's not everybody. Some people, are much better, in other media.
Yeah,
But for me, that's just so natural.
yeah. So it seems like then, so you're producing a book that you also have authored and illustrated. And give me the name of the book again.
The book is Info We Trust, and
Info
it's
We Trust.
available at visionarypress.com.
Visionarypress.com. We'll have links for that. And when would that be available?
Well, it is available very very soon. But what we decided to do is push back its publication date because of the election cycle,
Okay.
and so the publicist is like, don't bother competing. And I've heard
Yeah,
that this is actually happening to quite a lot of books. So
sure.
we pushed our publication date back to March 2025.
Okay.
However, I will let you know that I plan on anybody who pre-orders it, I plan on shipping you what I'm going to be calling an advance copy. So your
Okay.
pre-orders will turn into advance
A reader's
copies,
copy.
a reader's copy. And the reason is like there's no reason for me to pay to warehouse your book for an extra few months.
Right.
Um, I think once upon a time, everybody got the book on the publication date,
Yes.
and the reality of logistic systems, and everything else is that everything, these dates are more fuzzy
Sure.
than they ever were before.
Did you do a Kickstarter?
I did. This is our second successful Kickstarter project. Our first one was the series that launched the publishing shingle. That was called Information Graphic Visionaries. We did about 127,000 dollars on
Okay.
Kickstarter for
Cool.
that book series. And that book series is extraordinarily successful. It's been collected all over the world, and
Uh-huh.
people really love them.
Is it still, is it still in print?
It is. We still have copies to sell. We have about anywhere between. There's 3 books in the series, and we have anywhere between, I don't know, 200 to 400 copies of each book available right now.
Okay.
So the supplies are dwindling, and it was such a heroic feat to pull this thing off. I don't expect, like, we'll have future, once it sells out, we'll have future versions of the book. But it won't be produced in this way again.
Right. Limited.
These books have what I'll call double foldouts.
Yeah.
And so these are foldouts that go out in one direction and then fold out in the other direction as well. And what you learn about bookmaking is that a simple foldout, a machine can do it today, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
But a double foldout, a human has to do that. So they have to be folded by hand and then tipped into the binding by hand as well.
Our silver cord book had a fold out, but it folded out four folds out. So it was like 8 panels long.
Yeah. That
was all by hand.
Yeah.
It was all by hand. And so I was actually surprised amount of handwork, because I went to the factory in China that made it, the printing plant, and I was shocked by how much hand labor there was involved in making books like that. Because we had also the tipped in, I forget what they call it, inside the cover, the inside cover page.
Like the end sheets and papers?
End sheets, yes, the end sheets, right. The glue from the cover to the first page. And they were all put in by hand as well. So it was like, wow, that's a lot of work.
It's a phenomenal amount of work. And what you learn, you mentioned China. We've done our books in Europe, and unfortunately, you can't do that kind of work at anything approaching a reasonable cost. In the United States.
I know. Yeah, it is the color work, especially at large scale. There's nowhere at any price in the U.S. So, well, RJ, this has really been delightful. I love talking books because I love books too. You can't see it, but I'm in my 2-story library, and I love being surrounded by the works of others that are creative. And thank you for some great book tips and tool tips. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Go read some good books more comfortably.
For sure. Okay. Have a good day. We are glad that you are enjoying this issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. I just want to remind you that we also have some other coolish material on our YouTube channel here. So please subscribe, comment, and like. This show and tell is also available in an Audible podcast form. If you just wanted to listen to us, you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you subscribe to other podcasts. And if you're already just listening to us, you should know that there is a visual version of this show on our YouTube channel, where we're actually showing the tools. And there's a little bit more visual component there. In addition, the same folks that publish the Cool Tools website, that's all of us, me, Mark, and Claudia, we also put out a free newsletter every week. It's very, very short, just kind of 1 page or less. And we recommend 6 very brief items that are very succinct and easy to read, so you can deal with it in a couple minutes. And every week we bring you the 6 coolest things that we've uncovered and want to share. It's called Recommendo with 1 M. Just go to recommendo.com and you'll be able to find it there. It's free, and you'll get it in your mailbox every Sunday morning. So join 80,000 other subscribers to hear what we're thinking about and what we find cool that week. It's actually one of the most popular things that we produce. We also publish other newsletters as well. One of them is a very short, free weekly, like Recommendo, but for travel. It's called Nomadico, and it gives you 4 short recommendations for people who work where they travel or they travel while working. Another one is called What's in Your Now. It features things that are significant to you right now. Could be things that you carry every day or something very near you. We have another one that's about tools and tips for your workshop, and one that extracts the best stuff out of self-improvement books. You can get all those at our website, and they are also all free. And finally, I want to mention the fact that while our newsletters are free, they're not cheap. They're handmade by humans in California, and if you want to support us, we have paid subscriptions for each newsletter on Substack. So when you sign up for a paid sub, you're making it possible for us to keep creating them free for everyone else. So thank you for being a fan of any type, and we'll keep producing stuff if you let us know that you enjoy it. So thank you.